Even with people that you can trust, if the truth is inconvenient, they don't believe it.
What's up, movie fam? It's Jen and Rob here, and today we're going to be talking about the Netflix original series that we watched, Unbelievable. It's based on true events. It's an 8-episode series, and it's going to take you about 6.5 hours to watch the whole thing, which we did in about 2 days.
Yeah.
And we're just going to tell you what we thought about it, our feelings for it. So, I really enjoyed it. It's about this girl that was raped in her home, and she went to the police and told her story multiple times, and they made her believe that there was too many inconsistencies, so she ended up saying that it didn't happen.
Yeah, they asked her to tell the story over and over and over again. Each time she told it, little things changed here and there, and that's what made them doubt her story was even real, especially based on her background, being in and out of foster care and different homes and things like that. She just had a really rough upbringing, so it was hard for them to trust her.
So then it goes into these two detectives that have similar cases in a completely different state. And so they work really hard to try and solve the case, and it all kind of ties back to her in the end. What I really loved about this series is the emotion that was in it. Some of the footage was really hard to watch.
Sure.
But it had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. I was angry at some points. I was teared up at others, and I was actually clapping in the living room through parts of the show. I thought it was brilliant how they depicted so many of the scenes in the movie.
Yeah, it definitely puts you there, especially at the beginning when the whole scene unraveled and then the detectives came, and her misery, I guess, was not over when the assault was over. She had to go to the hospital and get basically tested and have the rape kit done on her and all this.
And it was a really intrusive testing that you don't really think about or see unless it's probably something that's happened to you, how even violating the testing is, and how violating that has to seem after coming off of an ordeal like that. And it's almost immediate. As soon as they get there, they get her story, and then they ship her off to the hospital to have every inch of her photographed and samples taken.
Yeah, she had to repeatedly live through this experience over and over and over again for all the different people that were involved that needed her story, and she had to have a written statement. So it was pretty in-depth of what an actual experience probably would be like.
And it showed not just her experience, but others. It was a serious serial rapist case. So it showed multiple of other victims, and I think it did a great way of showing the emotion that different people have in these scenarios. How some people kind of lock up, or some people want to tell everybody. Some people kind of brush it off, while others, are immobilized by it. But it just shows how like this one incident can and really change the entire life and outlook of a person. How truly devastating it is, and the system behind that, like how people go in and they're just automatically assuming maybe not the best, or they were believing her at first that this was real. And then one of her foster parents came forward and said, I think that she's making this up. Not in those words exactly, but by the tone and direction of their conversation, that's kind of where it was leading to. And he believed the foster mom over the victim. And not only did they not believe her, they made her sign a paper stating that. And when she went back and she tried again to say, it really happened, they were like, oh, so now you're doing a false witness statement, and then the news. It got into the news, and everybody knew that they thought that she was a liar. They were saying, and this is based off true events. This really happened to this person. Their name was dragged through the mud over something that
Really did happen to her.
Yeah, and they had no control over. And then the state actually sued her for a false statement, for reporting a false rape. And then these two detectives came in these other cases, and they really, it showed the different side of the agencies, and the way that these detectives can either really brush something under the rug or really fight for the victim. And these two other detectives did a great job of really getting in there, asking the questions, collecting the evidence.
Yeah, definitely did a good job of showing the different detectives and the different agencies and how they went about their investigation, and how one method might have been a lot better than the other method used to show, exactly what happened, or to get the story the way that it needed to be handled. And they did an excellent job on that. The initial detectives weren't as good. They didn't seem like they cared much. And, later on in the show, the other detectives that came in another area were incredible. They made the victim feel calm, and was able to get a lot more good information from that victim, which in the end helped result in the capture.
Yeah, and they did get the guy, and it was like, 32 rapes, something, over the course of, I'm not sure how many years. It seems like it started in 2008, and it was by 2011 he was arrested in the movie. I don't know if that's the real timeline for the actual case. And I like also how they didn't speak so much about him. They showed what happened. And they did show what happened, so it's pretty...
It was more from the victim standpoint, and then also the detective work that went into finding this person.
And it showed at the end, after he was captured and they put him in jail, that he wanted to speak about it. And he started talking about how this girl that this story's kind of based about, he was the first one, and how much evidence was there, and he was for sure that they were going to be knocking on his door the next day, but because the police blew it off and discredited her, he then went on to rape all these other women. I mean, if they had just done something,
done their job,
then he could have prevented him being a serial rapist.
All these other lives being ruined.
And that's one thing that I will say at the end of it. I was ecstatic for the outcome of the trial, but it left me with a lot of questions. It left me, I wondered, the FBI got involved, why they didn't do more to pursue this first police station, why they didn't look into why the investigation was wrong, why they threw this under the rug, and all the lives. I feel like more should have been done, and I understand that that's probably more because it is based on real life and a cinematic thing, and justice doesn't always work that way. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I loved the dramatic of it. It was really intense, and it had happy moments and sad moments. And I mean, the story itself really, the title puts it best. It really is an unbelievable story. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's one of my favorite things I've watched. We've watched a lot of things lately that show women empowerment, and that I'm loving it. I'm loving that they're coming out with these shows. I'm loving that they're portraying women in these situations that should break them, and they're rising above this and really taking charge and showing how powerful women are and can be.
One other thing that I thought was odd that they didn't get into was the other hard drive that the guy had on him, 75 gigabytes worth of extra files that the police were unable to access that hard drive because it was locked up, and he didn't want to give the password out or anything like that. So he pleaded guilty. There was no trial, so he ended up getting sentenced to what I think it was 320 some odd years.
Yeah, like 325 years.
He pleaded guilty to all those cases, but there was never else mentioned about the extra 75 gigabytes of hard drive data that was uncovered.
What was on there? Was it more of those women? Was it new women? Was it stalking videos?
Other
crimes?
yeah.
Yeah, it leaves a lot open. And it could be just because, it was based on a true story, so they really don't know.
Yeah, a lot of it was just pieced.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
I would really like to look into too is, maybe the real story. I don't know how much of it was based on the real story. I mean, it's based on the real story, but how much of it followed the real story versus cinematic.
And it could have been built on different crimes committed by different rapists, and they just kind of pieced them all together to make this story up. I mean, that's a possibility too, but
Yeah, we don't know really the backstory.
that's something we'll have to get.
Yeah, we just kind of seen it on our
Come
list.
across it, yeah, it was new and it sounded interesting, so we decided to take a look at it, and I would highly recommend watching it. It was well thought out, well put together, great story, kept you on the edge of your seat. Sometimes it puts you into the victim's shoes, and sometimes the detective's shoes to try to find out exactly what was going on, the stress in their lives. The detectives were working all day long and all night long, not getting to see their family, so that's time that they lost with their family to try to solve this case and help these women out.
Yeah, and it really shows too the work that it takes to be a detective.
Absolutely, yeah.
Another interesting thing about this is that they thought at one time it was a police because he was so clean at his sites. I mean, he wore gloves. He left nothing behind. He even made the women bathe,
Yeah.
which is really creepy and unsettling, honestly.
Yeah, the one lady thought he was going to drown her.
Yeah, said he
so
thought
she
he was...
tried to talk to him and just kind of get on his level to try to, I don't know, make herself, more of a person and not a victim, so that he wouldn't murder her. But obviously, he was just making her bathe to help clean up the crime scene.
Yeah, and another interesting thing is it showed how victims react differently. Where one of the victims completely zoned out. She imagined herself in a happier time in her life. And so she didn't have really much memory of it. She kind of blocked that out and was focusing on other things. And then this other woman was the opposite completely. She completely zoned in to every detail. And it really helped solve the case ultimately.
Yeah, she was able to provide them the best information that they could use to help capture him. How tall he was. They all gave a fairly good description about that, but she was able to remember key details that other of the victims were not able to, which really made the difference.
Yeah, and it was crazy because everything that she remembered when they went into his house, they found everything they were looking for.
Yeah, everything on their affidavit they found in his room.
And even after finding all of that, including souvenirs that he took, they were still worried that if it went to trial, that he wouldn't get convicted,
All
which
they had
is
to do
just
was,
crazy.
yeah,
I mean,
prove
it's
reasonable doubt.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy. And the system itself has had a track record of kind of throwing women under the rug in these type of things, because there are unfortunately people that make false reports. And either way, it's completely changing someone's life. If it's a false report, it's changing the rapist, and rape across all genres, even for men. I mean, men get raped too. It's less spoken about, it's less talked about, and it's starting to come forward about, the damage that it does, and that these things actually happen. And it was just, one of my favorite parts is, we've talked about how she was it was so invasive for her after this had happened to go to the hospital. And then they showed that scene where he was in the prison and they were collecting all his DNA and taking pictures.
A sample of that.
Yes, I really enjoyed seeing that aspect too. And then they just kind of left him there standing naked, which, I enjoyed. Not him being naked, but just that he was getting a taste of that. And it didn't go to trial, and I don't know. It's good and bad. I can see the good and bad and why it wouldn't want to go to trial. But I feel like
Yeah, a lot of the victims, that's a struggle for them to actually have to go to the trial and sit down. There was only a couple victims in the courtroom when they did the sentencing, just because the other women couldn't bear to see him or be in the same room as him again.
Yeah, and and it just really, it does leave a lot of questions for me. You know, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I would completely recommend it. You know, I would recommend it with caution, right? Obviously, if you're a younger viewer, this probably isn't for you. If you have some traumatic experience in this area, it might not be for you. I mean, it could definitely, it's very unsettling to watch parts of this and hard to watch parts of it. But they did a good job of not making those scenes very long, which I really appreciated. I have a really hard time watching these types of movies that have this genre in it. It's something that I'm uncomfortable watching. I try and avoid that. And so when we kind of started to watch it, I was kind of anticipating to hate it, to not be able to make it through, to just not like it. And it really blew me out of the water because I had those such negative expectations at the beginning, and then to kind of go through that story, it was very well done. And it really showed the victim's point of views and the emotional toll that it takes. And it really makes you think. It really makes you think about these people, what they've gone through, what they have to continue to go through. It's not over once you call the police. I think in the first season or episode, the foster mom came in and she's like, "Oh, the police are here. You're safe. They're here." And you know,
that was the furthest thing from the truth.
And it was, it was just,
she lived in hell, you know, for years after that happened. You know, with all the blame on her, they got her to confess that, you know, she didn't do it and that she made it up, and that all came as a burden on her that she had to deal with. And at one time, she even hopped onto a bridge to try to end it all because she just wanted out of it. She was tired of, you know, she'd been in the system her whole life, and she was just kind of tired of that almost bullying.
Everybody let her down. Yeah, she didn't feel
nobody was there for her.
Yeah, like the only person she could rely on was herself. And there was also, you know, when she was talking to a therapist and she finally opened up, I was like, yes, you know, somebody, the whole time you're just going there like thinking, somebody help her. So why is no one helping her? Why is all this, why does she have to keep going through all this negative stuff? And it's really sad thinking that this is
a reality,
you know, for this one woman, but a lot of people in general, you know.
And ultimately, you know, they only found out that she was a part of it was because when they went into that, the rapist's room and uncovered, you know, her photo, which, you know, he took photos of all his victims with their driver's licenses, which I thought was kind of dumb of him to do, but I guess he wanted it as a momentum or something to remember those specific people by.
And it kind of showed, like, even when he talked about where he felt invincible, he felt like he was smarter, he felt like he would get away with it, and he even said at one point that I would have continued doing this if you hadn't caught me.
And you guys were always one step behind, he would tell him. You know, he said the key to catching us is to be ahead, but you guys were always one step behind.
Always playing catch up.
And another thing that the detectives discovered was that there was a forensic book written by cops on how to process crime scenes and what evidence to collect and how to collect it. And that was one reason where they thought that it might have been a police officer or somebody in law who could keep a crime scene that clean. But then they discovered that this book was being sold on the black market per se, and that, you know, the civilians had access to this book and they could study it, and criminals would study this type of material in order to clean up their crime scene.
Yeah, and he, instead of doing it in the same area, he would travel to other districts, so that, because the way that they communicate rapes, and it talks about that a lot too, is that they don't really talk about them across districts.
Right.
So it was by chance that they even came together and realized that they had the same type of rape. And it was because of one of the detectives' husband worked in the district, and he had heard about
something
that
similar
rape.
happening.
Yeah, about the similar, because it was very particular the way that he handled.
And that detective could have just blown that off and not anything about it, but, you know, she was going after every single lead because she was desperate and wanted to help these victims out. Whereas the original two detectives on the first case didn't seem to put any effort into it at all. They would rather close it off and get it out, you know, from underneath them so that they could work on something else.
Yeah, and it's not at first. Like, at first it seemed like they really wanted to help. They were really eager, and then they just took that one person, that one opinion, and completely changed how they viewed the victim. They didn't look at her as a victim anymore. They looked at her as some dumb
Wasting
child.
their time.
Yeah, wasting their time. And they were so mean to her in the interrogation.
Yeah.
And they were basically saying, there's no way we're going to find them because you're so inconsistent. And she was like, what I really believe that it happened. And he's like, well, it either happened or it didn't. There's a rapist or there's not. And for her to be the first victim, that's still the part that's like really heavy for me. And I wish that they would have explored more or gone back. I mean, that cop, that one precinct could have changed the rest of these women's lives if they had just done their job. And he talked about how much evidence he had left behind at that crime scene.
And all they would have had to done was compare it to military records, and they would have found him because he was in the military, and it would have been that simple, case closed.
Yeah. I mean, it was, it's kind of mind-boggling.
But that's the reality, you know.
It is the reality,
unfortunately.
But it was so, but that's one of the things that, you know, I loved because it was so emotional. I had such an emotional journey watching this 8 episodes. You know, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like yelling at the TV. I was like, you know, I was ready to hurt somebody. And, you know, I cried at one part, you know, maybe even a couple I teared up. They were so sad. And then like I clapped. I was so happy at some parts that I actually was like clapping in my living room going, yes, yes, you know, like I really enjoyed it. I would definitely give it a 5 out of 5.
I agree, 5 out of 5. Yeah.
I don't know if it's something I would watch again, but I'm definitely glad that I did watch it.
I wouldn't mind seeing other shows with this type of format either. That, you know, all these limited series seem to be coming out that are pretty interesting, but it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I enjoyed that. I like the way that these shows, this one in particular, was written.
Yeah, it was written really well. But that's pretty much our feelings on the show. This is probably what we're going to do. We're going to watch a show, a series, a movie, whatever it is, and then we're going to give you our thoughts about it, you know, and we want your input too. So if you agree with us, maybe there's something you missed, maybe you don't agree with us, maybe you liked it, maybe you hate it, let us know. You know, leave a comment down below. Tell us what your feelings are, what you watched on it.
If you like it, make sure you hit the like button. If you have any suggestions, just reach out to us in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll be coming out with new shows, new reviews each week, and hopefully we can get some more. And
let us know what you want to see. If there's anything that you think we should watch, let us know. We're always open to new things.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next time. Smash the like button.